it is very difficult to know what's the starting point of the novel. For the dog park, this is the Finnish edition, the original edition of the dog park. It might have been the first time I tasted Ukrainian porch, which was decades ago. Estonian food culture, I'm half Estonian myself, is much closer to Ukrainian food culture than Finnish food culture. So, for example, the sour taste is very close to my heart, and Finnish kitchen is not very sour. So it might have been kind of gateway to Ukrainian culture to me. And I was brought up between Estonian and Finnish culture at the time between West and East. So Soviet Union is something I know very well. So in that way, it was not very difficult to start to write the dog park, which is mostly located in Ukraine. But of course, I was hesitating whether I dare to write a novel about Ukraine. But I did want to. But after the war started in Ukraine, I started to wait when Finnish publishers are going to publish novels from by Ukrainian authors. I was expecting that because, you know, every time something huge takes place in a world, something that creates headlines all over the world, then of course publishers pick up books coming from that territory. And so I was expecting, after the revolution and the war, I was expecting Finnish publishers to start to publish books by Ukrainian authors. And I waited, and I waited, and I waited, but they didn't. So I became very frustrated, and I thought, okay, obviously something needs to be done to raise interest towards Ukrainian culture. And I thought, okay, maybe I have to write about Ukraine myself, and maybe that will be a gateway to publish authors from Ukraine. We'll see. I hope so. But of course, I needed help, and probably this book wouldn't have been possible without the help of many Ukrainians who answered my endless questions about Ukraine. And I had also great help from Ihor Kucher, my Ukrainian friend, who happens to be fluent in Finnish, which was very important for the book because I write in Finnish. So I wanted someone who's from Ukraine and who is able to read Finnish manuscript to check the facts, you know, before the book would be printed. And luckily, my friend Kucher did so, and we had so many interesting conversations about language, for example, because I wrote a book about Ukrainian Finnish, and for example, how people address the others is something that it's kind of difficult from Finnish point of view, because we don't use patronyms, for example, at all. So I think the most challenging task actually about writing the dog park was to try to understand how people talk to each other, if they are Ukrainians or whether they are Russian or Ukrainian speakers. So that, I think, was the most challenging part for me. And this is when I give this answer to people when they ask about, wasn't it difficult to write about such a I don't know, sad destinies, and that was not so. So the themes and for or the sadness that the characters are feeling, or the rather tragic destinies, that was not the hard part. The hard part for me was to understand how Ukrainians and Russian actually address each other, and of course lettering the names was also a challenge, because that transcription of the Ukrainian and Russian names was also a big challenge for writing in Finnish. But then, of course, the because I love history, I couldn't help. I couldn't help writing about the recent past of Ukraine as well, and I think you cannot understand the present nor the future if you don't understand the history. And sadly, Ukrainians' super interesting yet tragic recent past is not very well known. It might also sound rather complicated. So that's why I also felt like it's important to write about that and try to give a broader picture of the background, and also the everyday life from the corruption perspective, because corruption is a big issue. And when I think about Nordic countries, then corruption as a word might seem a little bit distant, and people don't really understand how it affects the everyday life of ordinary people. So I felt that this was something I definitely wanted to write about. And of course, you Ukrainians, you know your country, so I wasn't. My intention was not to tell about corruption to you, but for people outside Ukraine, because if people don't understand how slow the process is to get rid of corruption, then they might feel like, okay, let's get rid of the sanctions towards Russia, for example. They might not understand how important certain things are. So I wanted to write about corruption because of that, to make people to see how it affects the everyday life of ordinary people. And the reason why kind of the main storyline goes around fertility business in Ukraine is that well, first of all, when I noticed that Ukraine has unusually liberal family code, and that the surrogacy tourism is a very lucrative business, I was thinking that, okay, perhaps this is a good platform to write about corruption, because fertility business offers a lens through which I can investigate also the structures of the society, of corruption, of equality, and things like that. Because I think one of the big problems in Europe is the economic gap between West and Eastern countries. And that's something that we definitely need to discuss more. Nyt pitää katsoa välillä kysymyksiä. Siirrytäänkö tuosta auringosta tuonne päin? Vai kävelläänkö takaisin?
Otan nyt vähän muutama askel siitä. No niin.
Ootas nyt.